All right, so welcome to today. Hope everybody had a good week. I told you I was going to cover this a couple weeks ago, but kind of have some stuff ready, and we'll cover a little bit into leases and master leases today. It's not really pertinent to what we do specifically, just more information about real estate. If you're a nerd for real estate, but I'm going to jump a little bit into like triple net leases and master leases. So I hope you all got some questions for me today. Um, I do have a book that covers this, I think. Let me see if that's it. I do have a book homework for y'all. So I guess I'll drop the book right now. I think this book is called Wealth Without Risk: Guide for Real Estate Investors by Jack Miller. If you guys are readers. It is available on Amazon. All right. So that's a little side quest homework. All right, we're gonna jump into it. So I did have some research as well for everybody here. All right, so um I do want to cover leases, cover a couple different things with leases, but should be interesting for some people. All right, so why leases? So a lease is just an arrangement between a party to operate that property or land parcel. So some people, farmers lease their land to landowners lease land to farmers. Some people lease their land to ranchers and stuff like that. People grow, people rent out or sublease it. There's a lot of different things here, but um, number one why I like leases is it's another way to ask for seller financing. So if you ask for a lease with the option to buy, it's essentially seller financing. So let's say I wanted to buy $100,000 property and they said no to seller financing. Well, another thing I switched that is I might ask for a lease with the option to buy. It's pretty much equivalent. All your payments go towards the principal, and it's essentially seller financing, just different words. So one thing about real estate is you can reword or switch up sentences to make the same meaning. And it's really, really cool. You can do it a certain way. So number one with leases is a lease with the option to buy is equivalent to seller financing. So we've had opportunities to negotiate it. We don't necessarily deal with leasing 100% on ours, but I know we've had made some offers with leasing. Farmer or the seller had a farmer leasing the property and they're paying X. So part of my negotiations, this is part of what your active listening is in negotiations, is you need to understand their underlying motivation, but you need to understand their underlying familiarity. So sometimes if they are leasing their property to a farmer, hey, could I lease it as well? I wanna lease with the option to buy, and that's a way to get into a transaction without um, buying it outright, or um, you get control through the lease. Now, what's cool about leases is at least with the option to buy, it gives you the ability to value add without actually purchasing. Um, what I mean by that is, let's say hypothetically, and I kind of bring this hypothetical scenarios very loosely because you can do real estate, and this conversation is kind of based off of like different random scenarios. Like I said, this is really a land call today, but talking about leases. So let's say hypothetically, you found a warehouse, 10,000 square feet, and seller's motivated. Maybe it's not 100% rented or leased out, and they don't want to deal with it anymore, and they don't necessarily want to sell, or they do want to sell. I don't know. Underlying motivation. You gotta piece it out however you want. But you offer them a master lease. Hey, maybe rent it out, they make $10,000 a month on their lease. Hey, what if I gave you 4,000 a month and I master lease this, whether it's rented out or not, you get a flat payment and it is what it is. You can negotiate your own lease payments, we're gonna cover lease payments here in a minute with commercial tenants, but you kind of can negotiate your own terms. Now, the terms of your lease are to your benefit. I know we're getting in the weeds. There's 27 people on here. You can get stuck in the weeds. Um, but the terms are to your benefit or to your detriment, whatever terms are negotiated on a lease. Because just like a PSA, purchase and sale agreement on a contract is important, a lease is sometimes just as important, if not more important. So your lease terms can benefit you as a leasee or benefit you as a leasee with the option to buy. It can benefit you in a lot of different ways. So you can, let's say hypothetically 10,000 square foot, maybe it makes 10,000 a month. You offer a master lease with that seller at 4,000 a month, and it's guaranteed by you. He might already have tenants in there that maybe bring 4,500 a month. So it's like, yeah, for 500 bucks a month, I'll let him deal with it. With your option to buy, you can negotiate a price, which all your payments go to the X purchase price, whatever that is. But it gives you the opportunity to value add. What do I mean by that? If there's vacant space or there's room for negotiation inside the current leases that are there, you can fill the space that's currently available to increase rents. You may have negotiated a partial release to the seller on that, or maybe it's flat rate. But you can essentially create cash flow on a property you don't own through a master lease. Really cool. But you can also value add. So commercial property is valued by its NOI, which is its income minus expenses. If you can increase the value of that property with your option through a lease, you now essentially creating value out of thin air without actually purchasing the property, which is really cool. So there's a guy I follow online. That's his whole strategy. He gets master leases on property because there's a, I don't know who says it. It's a quote that's probably been passed around. It's around for years, but it's own nothing, control everything. This is one of those things where you can essentially control a asset without actually owning it. So it's different scenarios. So side story is I'm some family friend of mine. He had like a small business where he needed like a flex space, a warehousing, like 1,500 square feet, 2,000 square feet. So he ended up negotiating a master lease on accident with the seller, and the seller agreed to it. He negotiated really good terms. Now he needed the flex space for his personal business, so he's running the business. He's like, man, this is getting crazy. So he ended up his business actually ended up going under. So he vacated the space and found a new renter. With the new rental rates on that space, he was able to make more money on the lease than he was in his business operating in the space. And he negotiated a really good master lease, so he essentially gets the cash flow spread off of all the tenants on that property, and he keeps the cash flow. So he's making more money off of all the tenants in that property than running his own business on that property. It's a really cool, interesting story. But that's a perfect example. But it's very interesting what leases can do. We're gonna jump into commercial leases. If you guys have any questions, put in the chat. I am monitoring the chat, but I'm gonna show you some commercial leases because as you do in the land space, you do come across it every once in a while. And as you're doing commercial land, you see it a lot of times. So who here has seen a double N or 3N thing in a commercial listing or anything like that on LoopNet or anything like that? Does anybody know what that means? Double net, triple net leases. Edward. Here we go. All right. Al. Twinny. All right. So double net and triple net leases have different terminology. You can Google it. Essentially, they carry different weights for the leasee and the lessor. I think it's the two terms, lessor and leasee. Essentially the owner and the tenant or whoever's has the lease. So they carry different weights of responsibility. So these big corporations that do triple net leases, the advantages they get by doing triple net leases is they don't have to carry the ownership of the land. So imagine you're in a high traffic corner on in a really good high traffic corner. There's a lot of vehicle visibility. You drive by those locations every day. If you drive for dollars, you drive to the grocery store. That way to the grocery store, wherever that grocery store is, a high traffic area, high traffic zone. So there's essentially big, anything of like your Walmart, HEB, Tractor Supply. They might be on a big section, and then there'll be like restaurants or Starbucks or a little strip mall right in front of it. There's gonna be all this stuff in front of it, right? So what happens is that anchor tenant brings a lot of traffic, and then they essentially have all this front part that is accessible, and other restaurants and ice cream places. They all want to be barbershops. They all want to be in front of that because they're already getting foot traffic going to that HEB or that Lowe's or that Tractor Supply, whatever that is. So what happens is that these big corporations, they have to buy that land, or hypothetically have to buy that land. That land might be worth $10 million. That's really, really expensive. And then the building might be $20 million. And then the annual maintenance on that building might be another $1 million a year. So it adds up really quickly. Not that they can't afford it, but think of as a corporation, they want more locations because their business is selling goods and services, whether it's Lowe's selling construction equipment or Tractor Supply selling farm equipment. They want to sell X, whatever their niche is. So they need good locations, and they're not necessarily in the real estate business. So if you guys ever seen if you guys haven't seen The Founder, it's about McDonald's, go check it out. It's another side quest movie for your entertainment. But The Founder kind of talks about this as well. McDonald's realized it wasn't a burger business, they were a real estate business. So what happens is these big corporations is they, instead of purchasing the land outright, they will sign a double triple net lease on the property, and they will pay rent to whoever the landowner is. So for context, every commercial property, a lot of them, there is a renter, which might be the HEB, the Tractor Supply, the Starbucks, the McDonald's, the Burger Kings, the Slotsky's, Tire Supply, Chase Bank. They're renting the land, and there's somebody that actually owns the land that is getting paid rent. Now, who wants to get paid rent from a Chase Bank every month? That'd be a pretty good check, right? We're not doing anything. This is why land is dope. So, and the reason why these big corporations do that is because I talked about the Lowe's. It costs a lot of money to build and maintain these things, that to hold it, they can get 5 more locations, hypothetically, versus keeping this one location in one spot. So they'd rather have more locations, sell to more people, versus owning that dirt in one spot. So they do a triple net lease. So we're jumping into some triple net leases, the good, the bad, the ugly. And remember, the lease terms affect the price because depending on what's in the lease, it can go either way for the lease owner. Let me require this question. Have you guys ever heard of commercial land leasing for storage near ports, industrial sites, airports? Yes. Secured land near ports, and yep. There's a lot of cool things. Okay, so here's another cool thing. I know I'm really into the weeds. I hope you all, if you're learning something today, give me a thumbs up. This is I love land, and I'm learning. I learned a lot about this over the years, and it's just interesting to me. I enjoy this stuff. So I actually learned that like you think of my marinas where boats dock up, somebody owns that land and they lease the land. I actually learned this from Frank, who's not here, but Frank said that they'll do like 99-year leases for the waterfront property, and they'll just collect rent. And some family owned that land where the marina is, and they just rent it out. They just receive cash flow off this land. So whoever built the marina owns, not necessarily owns, but they operate the marina and collect rent from all the boats, but they have to pay rent to whoever owns land for the boats. So it's really cool. So really cool space with leases. All right, we're gonna jump into, let me share screen. So I went surfing. I went surfing on LoopNet for commercial leases, just to kind of show different examples of stuff and what can be good or bad about them, and just the general stuff. Marvin says we're gonna RV park with Marina. So you can buy it if there's no lease in place, put a lease in place, and then sell it, and you can still own and collect off that lease. Food for thought. Food for thought. All right. So I picked out 5 locations. This is a Walgreens, 7.5 cap rate, and then it's selling for $7 million. It's crazy. All right. So the way we do cap rate is it's your NOI divided by the cap rate, which is 7.5, and you get this $7.5 million. So they're paying $565 a year. You do the math on that. 565 divided by 12. That is $47,000 a month. Walgreens is paying $47,000 a month to sit at this location. That's cash flow. It's crazy. All right, so $47,000 a month, and then there's something here that caught my eye. Let me see if I find it. Ba-dum. So what happens after the lease is up? Let me cover some of this too. So this is a 10-year triple net Walgreens. This is in Druid Road, wherever this is, Atlanta. This is Georgia. All right. There's something that stuck out to me. That's why I pulled it. So after the lease is up, essentially whoever owns the land keeps the building. That's another key thing. So they actually get whoever leases that space for a certain amount of time. If they build a building, any type of value add, you actually get to keep whatever's on it, which is really cool. There's something on this one that stood out to me. That's why I have to find it on why it stood out to me. Um, maybe we'll skip on this one. 50,000 cars per day. So visibility, high traffic corner. Oh, this is it. Preferred 5-year option structure. So remember the terms are written into the lease. So you'll see this a lot in commercial, preferred 5-year option structure. So essentially, I think they have one 5-year option. They don't really say, but they should. No, these other ones say it. So essentially, they have 10 years left, and then they have the option. They have an option to exercise for another 5 years. They may or may have not negotiated that 5-year option into that lease, and it could be to Walgreens' benefit and to the detriment of whoever the owner is and whoever created the lease. So what happens sometimes with commercial land, especially stuff like this, is sometimes these commercial tenants like Walgreens, I think I got a Hardee's, Dollar General. We'll cover those in a second. But what they'll do is these tenants, they're sharks. They got good attorneys, they got good lawyers, they got good high paid attorneys. So what they'll do is anybody that has doesn't know what they're doing, they'll try and work them over on their buy price or their lease terms. And it could be to the detriment of the owner that they get screwed. So I have another side story with this. This is off Twitter, and then I'll jump into the other examples. A guy owned a gas station. His name is GasBiz on Twitter if you want to look him up. You can search up the story, just search for Filet under his account. But he's talking about a story that he owned a gas station in a great location. So one thing I always iterate is that the land business, everybody that invests in real estate is in the land business. They might not understand it, but they're in the land business. Perfect example is this story, and it has to do with leases as well. So guy owns a gas station. He owned it for years. Chick-fil-A approached him. Hey, we want your location. Since you have a good high visibility corner or whatever X they wanted. So they start negotiating out the lease, but they want to lease it. Once you have a lease, you can sell that lease because it's not guaranteed income, but it's income that has value, hence the LoopNet stuff. It has value in the lease. So Chick-fil-A shot him a price, and he's like, that sounds kind of low. They shot him an offer like $3 million. He went and talked to a commercial broker that does leases with Chick-fil-A on the representation side, and they shot him a 50 cents on the dollar offer. Essentially, if he would agree to those first initial lease terms, it would have been worth $3 million, but based off of what was happening in the area and what people were getting, he could have got the terms he ended up negotiating with were like $5.5 million. That's what he actually ended up getting, and then ended up selling the lease on that property. But they converted his gas station into a Chick-fil-A, and he ended up selling his lease for like $5.5 million. But the initial offer they offered him was 3. So you always got to think about the lease terms that those entities create aren't always in your favor. They're always usually in the tenant's favor. All right, so we're gonna jump into another one. So this one, the 5-year option. So 5-year options, those are a really good one. I found a while back, but I couldn't find it, but I think I found some more. All right, here we go. This one is this is the Hardee's in Ohio, Dayton. It's a 20-year triple net lease with 0 landlord responsibility to begin with, escrows close, and a 6.25 cap rate. So if we do NOI divided by the cap rate, you get 1.7. Right? This is why this one stood out to me. Strong hedge against inflation with 6.5% rent increases every 5 years. What does that mean? What does that mean? This stood out to me because this is funny because essentially is they have I think that I don't know if this one has extensions too. This one it means that they have a certain they have a certain rent rate in their which is let's say 110 a year because that's what it is right now. So 110 a year, it's 11,000 a month, right? They're paying 11,000 a month. 6.5 rent increases over 5 years. So after 5 years, or after 5 years, the rent goes up 6.5% in tranches. But if you divide that by 5 years, it's 1.1% rent increase, which is crazy. Like inflation is 3%. So whoever holds this land lease essentially loses value the longer they hold it, if that makes sense. Quick little one. Let's jump to Hardee's. Here's another Hardee's. This might be the same one. Um, there's another one in here. That was a good one. Bum, 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 bum. I think it's the same one. All right, let's jump to Dollar General. All right, here's a Dollar General. Georgia, triple net lease in Georgia. Let's kind of run through it. 7.2 rent cap rate. List price is 1.1. NOI is 83,000. So Rob, I'm gonna answer Rob's question. How can brokers be not embarrassed to post this? People buy this. There's so much dumb money out here that people buy this. This is hilarious to us. All right, so this is a good one. Okay. There's 11 years remaining on the primary term, corporate guaranteed. So these are corporately guaranteed by Dollar General, which holds the credit rating of BBB, which classified. There's a good one. 4 5-year options to renew, each with a 10% rate increase. So there's 11 years left. So whoever bought this and created it, they've held it for 4 years or retraded it, but now there's 11 years left, right? 4 5-year options. So essentially, they control this site hypothetically for 31 years. 31 years. And then this is the other one, each with a 10% rental increase. So 10% divided by 5 is a 2% annual rate increase. Crazy. This is another good one. But 5 5-year options. Well, I found a discrepancy. So 5 5-year options, and it says 4 5-year options over here. So which is it? Who knows? But it's still bad. It's still bad. This is crazy. So essentially, they're buying at a 2.72% interest rate, but if inflation goes up higher than 2%, they're losing money every year they hold this. Hypothetically. All right, here we go. Kansas, we got a Jimmy John's, 5.5 cap rate, 994 purchase, 10% rent bumps every 5 years, so it's 2% a year. And then there's another good one here on this one. 2 5-year option periods. Right there. So as you can see, it happens a lot. But I guarantee you, if you really want to get dangerous in the lease space, get one of their contracts. What's the term is great artists create, but good artists steal. I don't know. If you really want to get some strong lease contracts, so you can get a hold of one of their contracts. Um, that's crazy. Those contracts are probably like super thick. So I do have some side note stories with this. Commercial it's a commercial land in general, or commercial in general is just it's a crazy animal in the real estate space. We actually have a commercial project we're working right now that's 15 acres in San Antonio that we're negotiating with Lowe's. And Lowe's, they said their current site requirements for land, so they can buy the land in different stages. So they can buy it raw, just untouched. They can buy it site ready, or they can buy it what's that third one? Um, Essentially the foundation ready. They have 3 different ways. And I was on a meeting with them like a week and a half ago. I think it was last week actually. And they said their site plan requirements is 500 pages long. 500 pages long. So they can get really into the weeds. But these leases have their benefits, especially for corporations and franchises that do stuff like this, because essentially they can grow into multiple locations. You gotta think of like Toys R Us, Blockbuster. I'm sure it was on triple net leases, went out of business. Walgreens shutting down stores. What's another business hit right now that's losing locations? Um, I think Chipotle shutting down some locations. So you gotta think they have long-term leases in these things that they essentially have to do a buyout agreement, or they have to pay that rent till the term ends. So commercial leases are a different animal. Um, they're a different animal. Um, One thing I mentioned a couple weeks ago is that there's different ways to like cheat the value of leases because remember it's based off the income. So what some people will do, I heard this one on Twitter. Like I said, I'm just a sponge for this stuff, but it's very interesting to me. But there was a guy, he said that essentially let's say you can rent a commercial space for $5 a square foot a year or $12 a square foot a year, it's $1 a square foot a month, right? Essentially what they'll do is they'll be like, hey, nope, nope, I need you to lock in this lease for X, but I'm not going to charge you rent for 6 months. Oh, that sounds amazing. That means I can do whatever I need to do for this property, not pay any rent. Yeah, but whenever the rent's due, I need you to pay $13 a square foot per year or $14 a square foot a year. They'll raise the rent on them. So it increases their NOI on the lease because whoever the owner is that's creating the lease on their side, they have higher than current rents in their lease. That way they already know their exit plan. As soon as they have payments of that lease coming in, they can sell it at a higher valuation to the next person and kind of stick it to somebody because those aren't current rent rates in the area. They're higher than rent rates, but they gave somebody some type of concessions to get the higher rent rates. So it gets very interesting into commercial spacing and leases. Um, yeah. So that's a little lease thing. Let me see what else I got. I got some more stuff. All right. Um, would love to see a case study. I kind of presented two in the or maybe three here. Would this apply to residential if we offer lease with the option to buy on large acreage and a take a lot subdivided out and sold to a buyer to build homes and trailers? Um, yes, so everything's negotiable. So let me ask, there's like three different questions there. If we offer a lease with the option to buy on large acreage, yes, you can 100% do that on a subdivide. We've made offers to that. We had a deal come in and they were a farmer and they're renting out, they're leasing the land to a farmer. So they said no to creative financing. So one of the offers we pitched was a lease with the option to buy. And essentially we'd pay them more than what the farmer was doing it for. We're going to pay them more than what the farmer was paying. And that was part of our lease with the option to buy. Um, yes, you can 100% value out of the lease as long as you have the option to buy with your lease. Yes, it's the same as other financing. You can 100% do this with houses too. There was during COVID, I talked to a big Airbnb guy, and if you don't do this right, you can get in trouble. Because I think somebody else got in trouble from this recently. Essentially, they're doing corporate leases with houses, and with the corporate lease, they would pay them more than rent rate, and then they'd put it on Airbnb after they furnished it. So they would leverage, let's say the house was paying $1,000 a month in rent, they give them 1,200, 1,500 a month in rent, furnish the house, and then put it on Airbnb and probably make 2, 3 grand a month off of it. So as a way to arbitrage the home ownership without owning the house, the the landlord slash owner received a higher payment than rent rate, and the master lease person who was doing the Airbnb dealt with all the issues of Airbnb. So it was like a win-win scenario. Um, so yes, you can do this with houses. Um, would they own their home outright or contribute towards a buyout of the lease? Um, I mean, as long as you have the option to buy it and your payments go towards the principal, I think it's 100% possible. Some people do this with like wraps. They'll sell their house on a lease with option to buy. It's another way of doing a wrap without recording the deed. So there's a lot of ways to go in circles around stuff that have different regulations. Because I know you can't do contract for deed in Texas, but I don't know if you can do a lease with option to buy or an option or just a second position mortgage. Second position mortgage probably is the cleanest, but there's a lot of different benefits to doing different strategies with leases. But leases are very, very cool. If you're in the commercial space or just come across it, it's very interesting to mess with. But any have any other questions? I kind of went through my little lease. Any other questions? Yeah, we've been using them. We've been using them loosely, but we haven't got any lease contracts yet. One day we'll get one eventually. The right person will come around that'll say yes to it. But uh, contract for deed is essentially it's an unrecorded paperwork. It's like an unrecorded note. So let's say you want to sell your house for 100, or you want to sell your property for 100,000, was a house or land, and you just have somebody put $10,000 down, and you have them sign a contract, and they make payments just like a mortgage and note. But what it is that you don't record the paperwork. Hey, you have the paperwork as the seller, and the buyer has the paperwork as a buyer. But till they pay it off, they don't receive title. So you essentially pay taxes. You're on title as the owner, and they have a contract essentially in place as a deed, and that is their ownership. So they pay it off. So that's contract deed. So, yep, no problem, no problem. Yeah. Anybody has any questions about anything? Anthony said he couldn't make it today. We got 20 minutes left. Go ahead, Bill Nye.
Yes, sir, Daniel. But I guess as far as the question, does no ag exempt kind of kill a deal? I know depending on whether we do the subdivide exit or if we're holding long term, it would affect it, right? If there is no ag exempt.
So some properties have deed restrictions. This is why we like the roll stuff. The roll stuff is going to be ag exempt in some way, shape, or form. But if you buy stuff close to the city, that's where you're going to come across deed restrictions and oversight zoning. For instance, we had a property we're working that we still have in a contract. It's technically agricultural, but has SFR single family subset zoning. So technically it's in the and what some municipalities will do is it's in the path of growth. They'll subset that zoning multifamily or commercial or industrial or even single family, but it could be agricultural at the moment. But it has a subset zoning of whatever the city wants it to be to push landowners and developers to come in and turn this area into industrial or single family or housing. But
Okay.
it does have agricultural zoning.
Okay, that makes sense. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So there's like there could be like underlining zoning or deed restrictions on the property that prevent certain things to come up unless you file for a variance. Which this is why I love land, man. Land is a clean slate, and you can kind of create whatever you want on any parcel. You just have to go through the paperwork process of it and the approval process of it. So let's say hypothetically you found this is really good stuff right here. So let's say you found a property next to an industrial place, but it's zoned agricultural, right? You contract the seller. Hey, you have this agricultural land for 10,000 an acre. Let me buy these 50 acres for $500,000, but I need 6 months or 10, 12 months, whatever that is, right? During your due diligence process, you go through the county and change it to commercial. And you do a variance. You go file through the paperwork, you go through commercial paperwork to turn it into commercial. If they approve you and they change your current zoning from agricultural to commercial or industrial, whatever that is, you just upzone your property, and now your property might be worth 30,000 an acre without doing anything but filing paperwork. And it's called the upzone. So it's just simple ways to value add land without necessarily, you don't have to build anything. You just change the zoning, which is a possibility we're doing on a deal right now. We have some agricultural single family but multifamily has a single family zoning, it's just higher density. So we're looking to change that agricultural parcel up into a higher single family density and then sell the land. Which is a project we're working on. Is marketing for large acreage similar to markets for small acreage? No, they're completely different. And here's the reason why. Small acreage, the only way to make money on a small deal is to find a good price. That's the only way to make money. They won't take seller financing. It's hard to get seller financing, long due diligence periods. Like it's hard to do all the things we do on small land, which is why you kind of have to do a version of what we teach on small land. Small land, you have to get a price arbitrage. There's no other way to monetize it. With big land, you can change zoning, you can subdivide it, you can build a house, put a mobile home on it. Like you have a lot of different opportunities. With small land, you kind of stuck on that price arbitrage, and that's it. You're kind of stuck there. You can. I've heard people that will get like a small info lot. They'll have engineered plans for a single family house, file that with the county as single family, and then sell it to a builder because it's already approved housing with plans. And I've heard people of value adding smaller lots, but it gets a little harder with small lots. How much to change zoning and what return can I give back a lender if they pay for change your zoning or engineering? I think it's individual to where you're targeting. So like the zoning thing and any type of entitlement, it's gonna take 6 to 12 months, give or take, on those type of projects, just because they yep, if any type of variance or zoning change or community housing project, you usually have to go through a committee, local development committee. You have to do notification through, some have different requirements. You have to notify through mail for the people that live within 1 to 5 miles from you or from your project. And you have to notify them of the hearing that you want to change this parcel into 200 units. There's certain municipalities, because I'm in San Diego. I learned this. I didn't know this, but I'm learning a little bit more about land everywhere and people have to deal with. But in San Diego, the state passed a law that if they're building multifamily in San Diego County, they don't have to go through a hearing. They can just build it. They have to do it properly through engineering through the city, but they don't have to do a hearing with the neighbors. Because you always hear about, hey, we don't want more cars on our road, we don't want more density, and the neighbors all show up, and you see those city council meetings with the people yelling at the developers and all that stuff. Essentially, in certain counties that have certain things, they can pass laws to totally omit that process out of it, and they just build. So depending on what the need is and the state deems what's necessary. And this is why I tell people, if you're gonna be land specific, be land specific, because you can have inherent knowledge to your local submarket that no one else knows, like us, that we operate all over the place, in random towns that we'll never probably sell a deal there for a year or two. Like we're all over the place on our side. But if you drill down and niche down into land subset laws into certain areas, San Antonio or certain counties, you can really get into have the upper hand over even people like us, because you know the ordinances and what changes. Um, and this is the crazy thing. I was talking to a land developer out of Canada last week, and he didn't even know about the 10-acre subdivide rule. Had no clue, no clue about it. He's been developing land in Texas for years. Had no clue about 10-acre subdivide rule. So us having local knowledge gives us upper hand. And this is why knowing the rules makes you dangerous. All right, let me go through. What return can I get back from your lender? It depends on what municipality it takes. Stuff like San Diego takes like 3 to 4 years. Arizona could take 3 to 4 years. Texas can take 12 to 24 months. I know North Carolina is probably 12 to 24 months, but it depends on where you're doing it. I don't know depends what you negotiate. How do you transition into asking for more time and lower down if you're only willing to select finance with larger down? I usually raise the purchase price. It's a good question. Let me read it again so everybody This is how do you transition into asking for more time and lower down if they're only willing to sell their finance with a larger down? So you have different levers to push. And I talk about this all the time in our negotiation, whenever we talk about negotiations, but you have price, you have terms, you have interest, you have down payment, you have EMD, you have due diligence period, you have all these different levers to push. So when they pull on one lever, you raise up the other lever. It's like the my kids have the little blocks where they hit it and it pops up the other side, and they hit it, it pops to the other side. You have to balance. You have to find those balance in negotiations when you're negotiating on different things. So Kyle, who's here, we're negotiating a deal right now, and they liked the terms, but they didn't like our time period. They wanted to close in 45 days versus 6 months that we initially agreed upon. So I'm like, well, if they didn't if they're pulling that lever of time, let me pull the lever of down payment. So we were initially going to put $100,000 down, and Kyle pulled that lever to 30,000. I'll close on 45 days or less if the down payment's 30,000. So you got to it's push and pull on different parts of the negotiation. And sometimes we'll put larger EMD to get more time. So it's just pushing and pulling on different things to get different things that you want versus what they want. Can we do a zone change virtually, or do we have to hire someone to do it for us? It depends on the county. It's going to be very county specific. Every county has their regulations. You can look up their subdivide regulations, their zoning variance regulations. You can look up their mobile home park variations. Like you can look up all that stuff online, and they'll tell you the steps. You can even call them. Can we get this recording? Yes, I will release this as a podcast in a week or two. In this case, we'd rather take title with less down and then do more EMD. There's a tenant in place with a house, and this one is a 4-lot deal with a house, and there's a house on 1 lot. So I think they just want to close. So if they want to close, we can close. We're just putting less down. So we pull different levers based off whatever the need is. What are your thoughts on 150 acre land deal I sent you? Kyle said just messaged back. So there's a lot of cool things that you could do, but push and pull, man. When I tell people about that are in our space about the negotiations that we get on our contracts, they do not get them because they do not ask for them. That is the number one rule of creative finance real estate, is if you do not ask, you will not receive. So people that are used to buying cash and closing quick, they will never get a creative finance till they start asking for it. And that's just the bottom line. So depending on the transaction, sometimes I'll push the purchase price up to get 0% interest. Sometimes I'll put more EMD to get more time. Like you gotta push on certain parts to get things released to you in your favor and in their favor. It's all negotiation. Any other questions? Hope you all learned something today.
I got a question for you, Daniel. So, like, as far as when you're targeting certain properties, I know it really comes down to whether the demand is in there and then the kind of comps, right? Because I know when I was talking with James, I thought I had a good deal, good down payment, stuff like that, terms. But like I said, there just wasn't enough activity. And then the exit wasn't as good because, like I said, the partial shape ended up not being the best. Because, like I said, one of them actually had like a road in the property. So, like, as you know, splitting it makes it harder or stuff like that. So, like, as far as how far can we go out? Because that one was still like 40 minutes from Waco, which is still quite rural than the hour-ish radius that we like to stay within.
I would say get a second opinion. There's things that we've learned that we may have changed our opinion since then. So
Yeah.
I'd say get a second opinion. We break our own rules sometimes. Like we say we buy stuff 45 minutes within a major metropolitan area, right?
Yeah.
We got a deal in middle of nowhere. We got a bunch of deals in the middle of nowhere. It's just our preference. Our preference is to be closer to the city, but we do break our own rules if the terms or price calls for it, you know. So you gotta, like, we've been doing a deal in Orange Grove for like a year and a half, and
Hmm.
we just paid off the lender. Now we're in the money, but it's just a deal we were working on in the background that it just took us this long to monetize. And
Right,
we're okay
right.
with that because there was still money there to be made. We just knew that it was an extended timeline. So if there's stuff rural land that makes sense, we still might take it on just because it might make sense. There might be enough margin there that it makes sense to take it on. So each individual project's differently. We might have some land coming up in Colorado soon. We got some deals coming in Florida, possibly Georgia. So we're opening up our opportunity buy box to different markets just because the methodology is the same. It's just, are you willing to wait for that result?
Yeah, and like I said, state regulations and ordinances stuff.
Yep.
Okay, makes sense. But I guess if, let's say for example the one I had, if there's no comps, that kind of hurts it, right? Because that means there's not demand. Let's say for example this one, when James and I were running it, most of the properties in the area were big parcels, not many very small parcels like skinny stuff. So that's why it was just kind of, I guess, different than a traditional like more dense city area.
Yeah. Generally what I look at is I look for solds and I look at what's available. I look at both.
Mhm.
So if I can undercut the current available pricing of what's available and I have a good enough margin, or like even if worst case scenario, let's say stuff selling for 15,000 an acre and I get this thing for 5, I was like,
Right.
hey, I can probably sell this thing for 10, but if I need to, I can sell this thing for 8 and it will
Mhm.
fly for 8. But I know I have enough margin that I can sell this thing low enough and somebody will come buy it because they know it's undervalued. So it's the wholesale model works like I need to buy this house 70 cents in the dollar minus repairs. We might do it. I need to buy this land deal 30 cents in the dollar so I can sell it for 60 cents in the dollar to somebody else,
Yeah.
And
Right.
the 60-cent buyer was like, yeah, I got a killer deal on this property, but like, no, I got a killer deal on this property.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's a cat and mouse game, and if the numbers make sense, the numbers make sense, and it is what it is.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, like the speed, pretty much.
That's it.
Appreciate it.
Go ahead, Marvin.
I was gonna ask about North Carolina. I got this developer with like 11 lots. 11, I think like 4 of them have been sold already. They're about 40K each, and they're an hour from Charlotte.
We'll look at it. We're looking at deals all over the place. We just the event was like a week and a half ago. I had like 30 messages in my inbox from all over the place. So we're looking at deals all over the place right now. We have a deal closing in Florida, hopefully in the next few weeks. And I haven't done a Florida deal in over a year. It just came up, there was money there, and we're jumping on it. So there's opportunities everywhere. And like I said, we're opening up. Like I said, 6 months ago, we're like Texas only, Texas only, Texas only. And now I'm like, I'll look at anything right now. If it makes sense, we'll jump on it. We'll make it happen. But we're kind of opening up our we're not gonna jump into like, let's do 10 deals in Florida next week. Like we're not gonna do that. We're kind of picking off here really good opportunities
Yeah.
that we notice are opportunities. And we're hoping to open up our experience into other states because like I said, we know Texas and we know how it operates, but as we do more and more different states, we're learning little nuances already. For stuff in Georgia, stuff in Florida. So we're just building up our experience. All right. Any last question? Or forever hold your peace. Till next week. All right. The kids are bothering me. All right, it's time to go. We'll see you next week. If you have any questions, let us know. Hit us up if you got anything on the hook. If you need any help, let us know. We'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Adios.
Hey, if you have any deals you'd like to submit to the Hive Mind and our team, go to hivebc.io. It's actually the Hive Buyers Club. Submit your deals and we can hopefully dispel your deal for you. Have a great day.